Nice cover, isn't it? This doesn't get the recognition, but it is a pretty solid Todd McFarlane cover. It's a classic, against all odds, Spider-Man image. Maybe I should jot this down somewhere to include in my next covers video. This is Spider-Man number 5, which is the concluding chapter of Torment, a story which has been a mess of a pointless yarn. The main problem with this is that Todd McFarlane, he is overreaching. Every problem with this story, it can be explained as Todd McFarlane overreaching. He didn't seem to be aware of his limits, or he vainly thought that he had none. And so he has embarked on this long, winding story that goes nowhere, but then hints at some grander idea or themes that he never explores. I actually think that his other stories on this book are miles better than Torment. They are a lot more focused, and they didn't have him trying to do all this stuff that he either cannot do or doesn't do very well. Like here, we have the classic Spider-Man scene. Spider-Man overcoming summit. Spider-Man finding the last vestiges of his strength. Spider-Man being able to stand up. It's the old Spider-Man scene we've seen a dozen times. There's nothing wrong with doing this. But the problem is that Todd McFarlane, he has already done this scene 3 times in this story arc. We had it last issue. We started with it when Spider-Man saw Unterman's Casper. This exact scene. Here, Spider-Man, he is forced to hold up a collapsing building. And this would have so much more an effect if we hadn't seen the basic idea behind the scene already in this story. Spider-Man, against the odds, finding extra strength and overcoming his limits. Oh, there's a potentially worthwhile parallel. Spider-Man, he overcomes his limits, but Todd McFarlane doesn't. And to continue with him repeating the same scenes over, Mary James, she is wondering where Spider-Man is and trying to distract herself from thinking about it. I mentioned in another part that this was Todd McFarlane trying to do something like Spider-Man's last hunt. I think that translates to he wanted to do a brutal story which turns Spider-Man on his head and had him go through some real internal emotional trauma. He has failed at almost every part of it. He's not clever enough to write thoughtful inner monologue exploring character emotion or mood. About the only thing he's done is he's had some brutal fighting with Lizard Man. Had the story just ran with that, something that he can do, it would be a lot stronger for it. The stuff with Calypso is embarrassing. It's like an exercise in avoiding ever providing a reason. This caption box here is a better criticism of her inclusion than anything I could say. She came from nowhere and gave no answers. And then we have Mary James. 3 pages later, same scene. She's still wondering if Spider-Man is at home yet. I want to like this story. Every time I read it, I try to convince myself that me and everyone else is unfair to it, and that it is at a quality level of some of his Spain comics, and people just didn't appreciate it. But it's not, it's really bad. If you broke this story down into a summary, it would read like a few unlinked sentences. The art is good. That is the main and only real strength of some of this story. The art is good. This splash page of Spider-Man is amazing. even though it is a repeat of the cover image. But this stuff, it works. He can draw Spider-Man. He can write dialogue that fits these big splash page moments. He can do that. He can do the fighting. That is stuff that he can do. The story, it should be built around those pieces rather than trying to say stuff in between them that McFarlane is incapable of saying. Instead of looking to Spider-Man's last hunt, Todd McFarlane, he would have been better off looking to the Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut issues. There would be a better inspiration. Then there's another fucking Mary James bit with her wondering about her husband. Do these exist just so Todd McFarlane could draw a sexy woman in the book? Was this book even being edited? That's another concern. I think the editor was too afraid to properly help Todd McFarlane. McFarlane, he was a huge deal and a huge seller. He probably would have been prickly about editors making demands or trying to direct them, but he sorely needed a guiding hand on this. Like, even just to say, let's cut down the Mary James stuff. 1 page is fine, since everything you're trying to impart only requires the 1 page. Fighting Lizard Man, it's fine. And then we have Spider-Man properly defeat him. That's good. That's like proper narrative writing. And then Calypso, you know, even this could be the moment where McFarlane as Calypso step out and reveal everything or say something about the story, but she is seemingly crushed by the collapsing building. And then Mary James, she can finally stop wondering when her husband is coming home, because he has. And then at the end, Lizard Man survived. Letters again, they are all aggressive or damning. In fact, this first one, it repeats my criticism of Todd McFarlane overusing the rise above it all idea. He actually goes through each page saying stuff. Maybe this guy was the original YouTube comic book reviewer. This is a proper flop of a story. I'm more glad that I have finished reading it than I am glad that I read it. I don't even think there is a good story in there somewhere. I think any good ideas were drowned out or pursued poorly by Todd McFarlane. It's entirely the writing that sinks it, and McFarlane's lack of ability as a writer. That's not to say that his writing doesn't improve. Even on this book, it is a marked improvement with the next issue. But I didn't recommend Torment. It is well drawn, bad comics, and I'm giving it 7 thumbs up.